come to Charter Oak, for me, very interesting product because it's, to me, again, this is closer to the state of Connecticut where we both have lived a large part of our life. And the story of the Charter Oak, but then also the product itself. How did this come to be, and what, I don't want to assume what was in your heart or what was in your mind when you developed it.
So this is great because you, more than anybody, you can understand this whole concept of Charter Oak. I started smoking. My grandfather was smoking Topstone Extra Oscuro. There were so many factories here in Connecticut. I grew up learning about the history of cigar culture in Connecticut.
In large part, it's the history of Connecticut.
It's one of the coolest things about Connecticut, right? This Connecticut Valley, where we're in the heart of it right here, has just produced some of the greatest tobaccos and still does in the world. And even the history with Cuba before 59, a lot of the Connecticut cigars use Cuban fillers,
Right.
Connecticut
Havana clear
wrappers.
cigars.
Yeah. If you actually look at a lot of the Cuban cigars these days, the lighter wrapper, in the 90s they did a lot of hybridizations with, people won't talk about this too much, but with the Connecticut shade seed. And you
Grown in Cuba, though.
Grown in Cuba,
Correct.
yeah. And you could see that because they do a lot of shade growing. In order to get the thin, silky wrapper leaf that you need,
No veins or very
no
tiny.
veins, clean. I mean, it's very difficult to grow wrapper. It's got to be flawless. So in order to do that, the tents, which was developed here in Connecticut River Valley, so growing the tobacco under shaded cheesecloth tents, it basically creates this microclimate. Humidity is 10% higher under the shade.
retained inside the-
Correct. To grow this very thin, silk-like. That actually came from, sorry to jump all around, but Indonesia is where the seed originated for Connecticut shade. That came from Indonesia to Connecticut in the late 1800s. In Indonesia, you had so much cover of the fields because of the jungle. So you had fields,
natural
and then you
cover.
had the, right. So the seed was already a thinner type variety, and then when they brought it here to Connecticut, especially at that time, you know, late 1800s.
It wouldn't thrive unless it was grown with some
Under-
either
correct.
natural or artificial coverage.
Correct. So, again, this valley is so highly respected amongst tobacco men and women throughout the world and connoisseurs. So this history has always been important. I always wanted to do something in tribute to all of those factories and brands that existed in Connecticut. You know, they still do. Chris Topper still makes cigars here, and but a lot of the brands have sort of faded out, you know, at the end of the 90s.
Or they're made in other places. And
Yeah. So you had Judge's Cave from F.D. Graves. So they were all in tribute to a lot of places in Connecticut. So I wanted to make a cigar that was a cigar at great value. More of that because Connecticut cigars were always great cigars, but phenomenal priced cigar. And you can-
everyday price cigar.
yeah,
Always
you can
was
cut
good.
your lawn, and you can do things, you know, outside and not, you know, when I'm doing things, it's tough to focus on a cigar. So, you know, I'll grab a Charter Oak, you know, when doing something like that because it's a great cigar, great price. So I wanted to do something in tribute, pay homage, and a lot of these brands are from Foundation. They're really paying homage to things that in my life
Part of the
that are very,
foundation of your
yeah.
life. That's the link, I think.
Yeah. Not to be
So
too
this
cliche.
product comes in 2 wrappers.
2 wrappers.
Right. Now the wrappers are grown here in Connecticut.
So the broadleaf Maduro is grown here, not too far from where we're at right now. The Connecticut shade is actually grown in Ecuador. So in the late 80s, early 90s, the Connecticut shade seed was brought to Ecuador. And since that time, they've become very successful growing it. Why? Cloud cover. So instead of having to build all of these tents, you know, imagine hundreds of acres.
Most of them you only get one season use out of it because you can't reuse the materials. And
Very labor intensive. The clouds in Ecuador, it's very this unusual cloud cover. I don't know cloud classifications that well, but it's very gray. It's a very thinner layer of clouds, and it just filters the light perfectly to make this golden brown Connecticut shade leaf. So unfortunately, here in the valley, a lot of that is the shade has gone down in production, but broadleaf is actually the exact opposite.